All right, Jen, you can take it away.
Okay. Well, I thank you for this opportunity again, Sarai and OPAC. And imagining all the folks that are tuning in and maybe tuning into the recording as well. Um, and can appreciate that you may not have a lot of time in your days to listen to such a thing or watch such a presentation. So I hope that it is of value to you. So I don't know if everyone can see this.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Great. Thank you. So this is my family. um, as time has gone on from the time that we found out that our youngest had a brain tumor just before she was 4 years old, um, I've become more aware of what I say about her experience and what 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 is okay for me to share while protecting her, um, I guess, dignity and independence and her experience, because her experience is different from mine and my husband's, and her sister. And when I was telling my family that I was going to be doing this presentation, I just kind of made sure that I told them about what I was going to speak about. So I'm in the best audience tonight, speaking as a parent and a caregiver to other parents, or other the folks who are supporting parents and caregivers. And of course, my eldest, she said, "Well, are you going to do a presentation about how the younger one is is the favorite, um, and just like her hard experience as a sibling?" Which I said, "Oh, maybe I could do that presentation next." And she said she was kind of laughing and laughed it off. But so this photo that you're looking at here, this was the one of the photos we had chosen for our GoFundMe page at the time when my daughter was undergoing um, major surgeries, and she did the chemotherapy for 70 weeks. During this time, we had our care at CHIO in Ottawa, and it had a big impact on us. We lived about a 2-hour drive away from that hospital, so it really everything really took over our lives, and we had kind friends and a community that supported us, and someone had offered to do this page. So this is us. And in that spirit as well, with my daughter's first brain surgery, which happened very quickly after it was confirmed that there was a mass by the CT scan. Our friends, really rallied around and tried to support us in ways that they could. And this is just an example of some prayer flags that folks had made for us, with our family in mind when we're going through these hard times. So my intention for this talk tonight is, may this time tonight allow us to speak with each other about grief, dying, and death without judgment, and may it be supportive, countering any loneliness we may feel. May we have the courage to share and be seen. And I realize that this sharing and being seen may not happen during this presentation. It may happen, I may not be witness to it, but may it happen perhaps as a result of something you hear, or something that's catches your attention. So I wanted to read a poem by Mary Oliver, an American poet, called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So when our children are diagnosed with a cancer of any kind, there are many challenges that we are instantly faced with. And this sign, I don't know when I took this photo, but this photo is from a sign in the hospital. Likely was at CHIO, could have been at St. Kitts. Anyway, I find that they're more and more everywhere these days, which is probably a sign of the times that we're living in, these difficult times in general. But to me, when I would see this sign, I often felt that though I don't disagree with the sentiment of the sign, I do feel that it's perhaps an opportunity for families to be perhaps more supported emotionally when they're dealing with such difficult situations. With a little sleep, completely off guard, your life is falling apart, your family is separated. There's just so many things behind our experience. And when we're in the hospital, all of those things we experience, we're experiencing them in a public way. We don't get a lot of time perhaps to react, to prepare, to respond to, the different healthcare professionals that we encounter. Anyways, it's extremely challenging. So in a way, I feel I agree that, aggressive behavior, outbursts, and such are not, perhaps they can't be tolerated in the healthcare context. However, we do need some kind of support, and we do need outlets somewhere for all of those difficult experiences. And so these are some of the challenges. There are many more, and these are somewhat broad. So I think the biomedical focus itself of, medical treatment, being in the hospital and the healthcare system, the emphasis is on the body for the most part. We are very fortunate to have social workers hopefully at our disposal. We have child life programs, which are essential. There may be other therapies, music therapy, maybe even art therapy, to support us. But, predominantly the experience that our child is going through centers around the body. There can also, of course, be spiritual care as well. I should mention that. But at the same time, those things can be hard. Those supports can be hard to find, or hard to find connections that work for you. Or in my experience, I would make an excellent connection with a social worker in one department, and then would have to start all over again as the care changed, and we're dealing with another area of the hospital. So it's extremely challenging, and we're expected to, roll with it, with a lot of grace, which of course is not always there for us in every moment. When we're not sleeping, or we're spending all of our nights at the bedside of our child, with a lot of worry, concern, and trying to advocate for them. It's very challenging. So another challenge that we face is an emphasis on positivity and optimism. Even the metaphor of battling the illness and the cancer, it puts a lot of pressure on us, and it can kind of, I think, eclipse some of the full spectrum of the feelings and experiences that we're having. Just the realities of caregiving and parenting a child with cancer it's very, very challenging. It's very demanding. And for some, right now, I should say that our daughter, who is living with a brain tumor, she's had 3 brain surgeries, which she's come through, which is, it's a wonder and a miracle and amazing in and of itself that she made it through those surgeries. Some surgeries, more than 18 hours long. And her last surgery, which she had at the kids, during that surgery, 95% of her tumor was removed, which is absolutely amazing. The fact that she has come back from that and she still seems to have her personality intact, like, it's just unbelievable. But, when you're going through those intense periods, we did live those, and I'm thankful now that she's going to be 13 on Friday. She does live with some blindness, and she has left side weakness as a result. She is still receiving treatment, but it's a more targeted therapy, and she's able to take, a small tablet at home every day. It's very different from, the chemotherapy where she was in clinic as an outpatient. But I know that it can be so intense. Like, your life is just, it's just basically blown up, and you can feel so vulnerable and so raw, and you can be in a different kind of state because you're living in this hospital environment most of the time. And it's very isolating. Excuse me. Because you were there mostly to support your child. Communicating in itself can be so challenging. Just communication of, like, the things that happened in the day to other people, because you can be so tired of all that talking. And then if you're trying to, when things are very contentious, big decisions need to be made, you're communicating with physicians, you're trying to communicate with the healthcare team. Like, it's just so much, and it's so tiring. Then we have our, jobs, our work or career, which a lot of the time sometimes has to be put on hold. So you're removing yourself from that environment, or you're trying to keep up with the demands. And then you're witnessing what your child is going through. You're witnessing treatments. There's a term that's iatrogenic suffering, which is basically the suffering that comes from the treatment for the disease. So, we are witness to all of these things as well. Then there's just the demands of treatment and hospitalization. And then we have our other family members and the needs of them. And then I have here other people, just because, I'm sure that many of us have experienced that people we know, care about, could be friends, community members, family members. They just really can't, they don't know how to respond, and they're really not helpful. So I'll just say other people. Finances, of course, this is real. It's very challenging. Our identity, as adults, our identity as parents, it's all shifting and is challenged. And yeah, advocating for our children, which I already mentioned, that it's very, it's, I know for myself, I felt like Mama Bear incarnate many times, because I was so concerned about my child's experience that I was just always speaking up for them. So not very, somewhat annoying for the healthcare team, but I tried my best to advocate for her. So, my question to everyone watching is what other challenges are you facing? Like, it's our, you see that whole picture there, and that's, confirmation that these situations are rather impossible. When things are at their most, tenuous and intense. And it can be like that for good long stretches. And some people never, and when it happens that their child dies, those families maybe are not even getting a respite from those intense times. So there are also, of course, challenges that we face in grieving. So when we're grieving, and we're in relationship, so for example, my husband, myself, like everybody's different, and everybody grieves in different ways in different times. So it's not always, it can be an isolating experience, because you may not be grieving the way the other person is grieving. If you're living in the same, if you're in living in a partnered relationship, or you're with your husband or your wife, you recognize, like, okay, what's upsetting you or what you're grieving about, the other person might not be, and then it's just unpredictable. And then, you have, as families as well, we also have other people that we're in relationship with. So we may have parents ourselves. We may have exes. We may have, friends. We have our own children. We have their siblings. We have wider family, friends, and communities. So, everybody is, will have some kind of a response to what's happening to your family, to your child. And, they're having their own experience at the same time as you are having your own. It's so, it's a lot. And then sometimes we find ourselves that we're in public, and we, how do we grieve when we're in a public situation? That can be in the hospital. That can be in the grocery store. Encountering other families at school, having meetings with teachers, like it's another challenge to our grief. And then, overall or underlying, we're living in a death and therefore grief denying and phobic dominant culture. So there's not a lot of space or value placed on grieving. There's not a lot of acceptance or compassion for it per se, perhaps in our day-to-day. And as a result of death, not being, I'm going to say welcomed, but as a result of death not being seen, if it's seen as failure and it's not seen as part of, the trajectory of our lives, part of what it is to be human, part of what it is to be alive, then we don't have a lot of proximity to death. and more so, we don't perhaps see a lot of people dying in our lives. We may never have sat with someone who was dying before, or taken care of someone who was dying, or have taken care of someone who has died, tended to their body. So, we need to learn how to do these things. We have to learn how to grieve. So this is my theory, my hypothesis, is that we need to take the time to grieve. And we need to be supported in our grief. And yes, we may need to find, those supports, because not everyone is friendly to these feelings and, grief. So ways that we can help ourselves is to try to be as compassionate to ourselves as we would to someone else, and to try to be tender with ourselves, to do what we can to feel and acknowledge changes, endings, losses, and feelings, as they happen, as we encounter them on the day-to-day. We need to try to take time. Now, I realize that I can remember the days when, we're basically living in the hospital and I could hardly get outside for like a 5-minute walk. So I know this is extremely difficult, but if we can make a point of taking some time, it could be 5 minutes. It could be 5 minutes in the washroom somewhere away from whatever's happening. In the shower, I've heard many people can tune into their feeling and their grief when they're in the shower, or in the car. If you're in the car by yourself and you have music playing, or just being alone in the car. And we need to try to let the tears come. And sometimes that also, of course, is not, it can be anger, right? It can be rage at the unfairness, or the injustice of what's happening, and things that have been taken from us, taken from our child. Perhaps a childhood that they're not living. There's many, many losses. And then we can be selective and protective. With whom do we share our vulnerability? Is when we are grieving, and when we're trying to, be a parent, a caregiver to our children who are living with life-threatening illness, have a diagnosis of cancer, who are undergoing treatment. I do think that we need to be selective around, who are we calling upon, and who are we letting into our circle, because we are very, very vulnerable. And you want, if you can find people who can give you what you need, that is the ideal. I mean, I know that we can't always, those people are not always in our lives, but sometimes you may find a professional who could be in that role. We were fortunate in that we had a friend that we had made. She just was so in tune with what we were going through. She always seemed to make the best choices around trying to help us. She really paid attention to what was going on. She was like a dream. She was an angel to us. And you need to remember, or you might have to rediscover what nourishes you, what feeds your spirit, what recharges you. It could be, the smallest thing can bring you some joy in your day. And then the reminder, of course, to eat, because I remember the days where, so like on a day like today, I marvel at the fact that I'm here talking to you about this and giving this presentation. But because there are so many days where I just felt like I could not eat because everything was so upheaved, right? And yet, it's really important that we really try to take care of ourselves. Like, this is the time when you really need that. So there are ways, sometimes the meal train idea works for people, or if folks have the financial, means, you purchase more of your food, you ask someone to make some things for you that you can have at the hospital, just little things like that. You really need to try to take care of yourself. Easier said than done, I know. So I'm somewhat biased because I'm a creative person, and I've worked as an art therapist, and I'm an artist. But I have found that in working with families who were living with someone who was dying, so it could have been a parent or grandparent, or even the children themselves, they were receiving palliative care. I was employed as an art therapist, but became clear in my learning process that what I was doing was not therapy, because what people are needing when someone in their home is dying, they need to just feel and be and grieve. And so the art making, crafts, any of those types of creative things was a way for us to connect to those feelings and to connect with each other, and to normalize what everyone was going through, and the sorrow, the grief within it all. Not only grief, but the love, the grief, the challenge, the hard feelings, the difficulties. So in that case, there isn't anything wrong. There's nothing that needs fixing, so to speak. It just needs an encouragement. It needs a support and an expression. So by using our hands, we can create something with purpose or expression to connect to feeling, but I would say also to connect to thought as well. A lot of my experience of what we went through was, I believe the term is cognitive reappraisal. So, you are trying to get a handle on, like, what is going on? How am I needing to adjust my way of looking, thinking about things? So, art can really help with art making. Doesn't have to be art in the sense of art that you're sharing with anyone or art that looks good. It's more for yourself. You could share it with someone, but that's not necessarily the goal. So in any kind of arts, music, movement, words, anything that I think resonates with you, there will be something. I think that it's been said or found that music is actually one of the most engaging for people, and emotive and connecting, and accessible. So materials and supplies that are portable and easy to use. So, as a parent, if your child is in hospital, or even if they're at home and you're needing to be at their bedside, having something with you that you can just grab and use, that's really helpful. Like, that helps to make it easier for you so that it could actually happen. That could be anything that appeals to you. It could be writing, it could be poems, it could be something in your phone, it could be taking photos of things, putting a photo and a word together, it could be sewing, it could be anything, collage, anything that is attractive to you and appeals to you. There were many days, I'm a creative person, but there were many days because I think I was so devastated. I felt like, I think I had such moral distress at times that I couldn't even bring myself to maybe write something, or because I was just feeling so overwhelmed. But I would try to just accept that, and that there are days when, you might not feel like writing anything. You don't feel like saying anything. You don't feel like talking about it. You don't feel like going there. But then there will be times when you will, and to have these things available to you so that they can help support you in your expression, in your grief. And then there's ways where we might be more deliberate. So we might use creative ways to mark milestones. So like, a common one might be, of course, like the end of chemotherapy protocol, or it could be something else. It could be something that has a special meaning for you and your child, or you and your family. It could be some kind of a transition, endings, the beginnings of the day to day, and then you can engage symbolism, story, metaphor. I know that when we would have these moments that felt bigger, and maybe it was just our anxiety that was bigger, I'm not sure, but like an MRI to see how the tumor is doing. We would, or I could speak for myself mostly, I would deliberately do something that day so that I would feel supported, and that I could, let some of my worry down a little bit, but mark that with some kind of special attention. I often, when I was walking into the hospital, because there's this feeling of when you're going into the hospital, it almost feels like anything can happen, and you don't know what, things can radically change. And because of the interventions that are possible, or the information that they may learn about your child and the direction of things. So whenever I would walk over to the threshold into the hospital, I would make a point of like saying a little prayer on the way in. And when we were leaving after an admission time, I would try to make a point of noting that we had a place that we would go to outside the hospital. When I could get out for a walk, I could go there. Nature is also always available to us. And you may connect with a spot, a tree, a place. And there was one spot that we connected with in Ottawa that was, quite, around, right around the hospital, on the grounds, but just tucked away a little bit. And we could go there. And we often went as a family to, basically share our gratitude. But also, we would be basically laying down our prayers there too, my husband and I. And we're quite aware that we're just one family is going through all these things. So those are some of different ways that can help us with our grieving. So I have a poem. So one of the things that I would do often was write, and I've continued to write. But this was one that I found, excuse me, recently, that I had written in 2019. Context for this would have been after a good time of recovery from my daughter when she went through a major surgery, the fall of 2018. So I wrote poetry and prose returning, words popping their heads up. I feel and think so many things and speak few. You and I, we fumble along, so much shifted now. So near full moon, tonight, strawberry. I spot you out windows. Our daughter is sick, and we worry. 1 week till her next MRI, and we worry. Can't be helped, being humid and laid bare. So, when we're living with a diagnosis of cancer in our family, particularly when it's one of our children has cancer, we are in the land of uncertainty. Whatever pretense of control or predictability that the rest of us live with day to day, which really isn't there, but is stripped away. So, there is uncertainty all around us. We don't know how it's going. There's ups and downs, forwards and backwards. Things can change so quickly. Life can change on a dime. When things change course quickly, improving one day and worsening the next, and life is beyond our control. Is there anything that we can do? So, I'm not going to have all the answers for these things. And I'm in it with you. But what I could say is that what we can do is to try to be present to all of that, to all of the ups and downs, the roller coaster. I've likened our path to riding a dragon because it's wild. Like, it's very hard to relate to if you haven't lived it. But I think all that we can do is try to be present with what's happening and try to be responsive. It's very challenging. And then, in the shadowy places again, when we're on the edges and perhaps nearing death, there's the term anticipatory grief, which describes the grieving that happens when we know that someone is going to die, when our child has a terminal diagnosis, when it's been decided that what can be offered to them is palliative care, perhaps, when no more active treatment is possible, when the cancer has returned or spread, and we can see the approaching end of his or her life. From my parental perspective, I have seen these possibilities. They're very real, obviously, and we are all going to die. But when it's your child and you see this as a very strong possibility, I know that for myself, I would say I was very afraid. You think, like, how could I possibly witness that happening and not be able to do anything about it? But of course, there are things we cannot have any effect on. And, there's a helplessness to our experience as parents. And at the same time, I have met people who have, very tragically, a child of theirs has died, and somehow they have carried on. Like, it mystifies me. I think it has been said that it's one of the deepest sorrows that there could be. And I don't think that you could never, I don't think it's something that you could heal from, so to speak. It's devastating. So my thought around all of that is that, again, we need to try to engage with what's happening. If we are in this very sad, like, sorrowful situation that we know our child is going to die, my desire would to be to spend as much time as I could with that child, and to try to have that. I would be having that in my mind to inform how I would be spending my time with that child. And I hope that there could be an acknowledgement. I would be really trying for an acknowledgement of that, and trying to speak with my child about their death. And again, these are things that we need to have a lot of courage in order to do these things. And there are professionals and like healthcare team members who could possibly support us with this as well. But you trying to live with what is, and death is part of life. Children do die. Some children, of course, don't even make it to this life, human, disembodied, earthly life. So when there is no more that can be done, what is to be done? It's something that I think only we as parents and individuals can answer, and that everyone's answer might be different. And the idea of anticipatory grief, that you could perhaps you grieve ahead of time. Maybe your grief would be lesser after somebody dies. I think they're different. It's a different type of grief. It's a different grief that you have knowing that someone is dying. And then it's a different grief when someone dies. And the hole that someone who dies leaves in our life cannot be fully known until it is lived. We can't know what that is until we live it. So we cannot escape the heartbreak of what it means to love. And the only way is through. It reminds me of that children's song, going on a lion hunt. Can't go around it, can't go over it, can't go under it. But that's, it means falling apart, essentially, and letting yourself, I don't know that you can stop it. We can try to push it down. We can, ignore it. But, at some point, I think it's going to come through, and, we have to go down. So I just wanted to end with a reminder that caregiving for our child with cancer is a marathon. You cannot forget yourself if you want to be able to continue to be there for him or her and the rest of your family. And it sounds so trite and cliche, but you have to treat yourself with care, and you are a precious resource. So I may have things may have gone a little bit preachy at the end there. Wasn't my intention, but it's hard because a lot of these topics don't get a lot of airtime, and it's a lot to talk about as well. And with, depending what everybody has going on in their lives, what can anyone really take in either? So like ultimately, you may not have the time and the space to grieve. Like you may have to function. Like that is also a thing. But I pray that there's, respite times for people where they can try to touch in with their own experience and their own grief and their own sorrow.
Thank you, Jen, so much. It was very heartfelt, personal presentation. I really appreciate you sharing a lot of yourself, your personal story, your poetry with us tonight, and really great advice for those who might be going through a very hard time.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Jen? There was the one question about anticipatory grief, which you covered so well. Thank you for that. There was another question we had received in advance from a parent asking, how do you handle grieving through repeated occurrences or recurrences when being hit again and again with another relapse, just when things were starting to look better? How do you deal with those back and forth, right, of that struggle?
Yeah. I mean, I think that all you can do is to try to acknowledge that and, speak about that. You have to, it's so challenging. You may also need, when that's happening, you may need to reach out for other supports. But there, a lot of the journeys that we are on they're all over the place. So it can be things can be totally turned upside down. And things can be very tenuous. So I think, I would encourage people to try to stay in touch with what's happening and to try to continue to express and to feel, and to share their thoughts about what's happening, how hard it is.
And how you mentioned it's a dragon ride, right? It's a roller coaster ride, up and down, lots of up and downs. And it's, it's normal for them to feel the grief and then the happiness and grief again. It's a ride, right? It's quite a journey. So thanks.
I was struck so many times at how unsustainable the whole thing was. There are a lot of families who break apart. There's statistics about couples breaking up, and because it's crazy. And so, we have to just try to do the best that we can. And we have to try to lean on the supports that we can manage to get around us as well, to get through.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions for Jen while we're here? So Jen, where can people learn more about you, your art? It's riversong.ca.
Yeah, riversong.ca. Also, I would say that I have shared a lot of my own creative expression around all of this on my Instagram page as well. So that's Studio Nymphaeus.
Yeah, we have that linked on our pages as well.
Yeah.
On our Instagram page, we've tagged you on that so people can look it up. Yeah. Oh, Geraldine, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I thought I'd raise my hand. It's like a class. Thanks so much, Jen. That was beautiful. Your time were you sharing your journey on Instagram? Like throughout the journey with your daughter's cancer?
I have shared, yeah. It may not always be so direct, maybe, to know specifically what was happening, but you can see there's a lot of references to different things that she would have been going through. There was at one point when she was doing her chemotherapy for that year and a half. So we would drive every Friday to Ottawa and then we would come home because you're trying to keep your family together, and it was crazy. And so I tried to have fabric squares with me so that I would stitch something each week. And so you'll see like one of the posts that I have like this sort of like wad of squares all stitched together. It looks like kind of like a gauze roll, and then I have it on my legs at one point. So I don't know. There's a lot of different references to different things throughout. And I had, before I became a mom, my professional experience was working with families, living with cancer and palliative care and hospice. And I had written a master thesis as well about the fear of dying and death. So all that, though, happened before I became a parent. So it's kind of interesting. This is my first, I would say, talk in public to try to maybe integrate. I don't know if it's possible, but I feel like there's kind of like two sides of myself a little bit. And I think that probably informed how the care, like how the experience for my daughter was, because I already had known so much about that whole world. And then when I found myself in it, I was like, I had a whole other experience of it. But it was informed by the sort of head knowledge, and what I learned from other families. But way back when, I mean, people would say, some parents would say to me, well, you don't know what it's like because you're not a parent. And I would say, well, it doesn't really matter. I think I said something like that. But, I know now that that's not true. It does matter. So I think, becoming a parent changes you so much. What is it? They say, rewrites the geography of your heart. So, yeah, in any case.
Yeah, I'm glad that you did your first talk with us.
Yeah.
And it's a nice supportive community here, because we all, we're all parents here, and yeah, so it's good. And I really appreciate, like you said, it doesn't get a lot of airtime, this topic. A lot of bereaved families feel like we've heard it, I've heard it, been dropped, and people just kind of disappear. And even though they mean well, it's just a hard thing to have to talk about. And a lot of families feel alone and isolated. So it's good to talk about this and see how we can support them. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
I mean, we definitely experienced that. I mean, our child has not died, but when you come in really close and it goes on for quite a while, people are like, I'm just going to stay away from you, I think.
Well, yeah, it happens.
Family in the dark corner.
Yeah, it changes. We've heard it a lot of times, that a lot of relationships change. That's a whole other topic, but definitely interesting. So we'll put this up on our YouTube page tomorrow. We'll share it so people can listen to this very, very informative and interesting and valuable talk. And maybe contact you, through your website. And if anybody's watching this wants to connect with OPAC, we're here as well. That's what we're all about: peer connection with parents, with our parent liaisons who are themselves parents who have had a child with cancer, like Michelle and Susan here. And they do weekly drop-ins, like virtual ones, as well as at the hospital at Sick Kids. So just check out our website, opacc.org, if you're interested in connecting with us. And we thank you, Jen, again, for being here tonight, speaking to our families about this very important topic. And I'm so glad your daughter's stable, and that she has a birthday on Friday. I hope she has a really great birthday and all good things, hopefully. So
yes,
thank you
so much.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, take
Good
care.
night.
Night.
So much.